On this podcast, you'll find interviews with high-performing, successful individuals in life sciences. On a weekly basis, we cover their proven methods, principles, strategies, and mindsets to implement new technologies that scale to meet the needs of people in our world.
This episode of Life Science Success is brought to you by 5280 Life Sciences Consulting. If you need help setting your strategy, meeting your operational goals, or are selecting and implementing critical technology in your business, we should talk. Visit 5280lifescience.com to schedule a meeting and find out more.
So today I'd like to welcome to the podcast Julio Martinez-Clark. Welcome, Julio.
Thank you, Don. It's great to be here. It's really an honor to be in your show. I look forward to it.
Thanks so much. So can you just take a moment for the audience and tell them a little bit about yourself, who you are, and where you currently are located?
Sure. I am the CEO and founder of BioAccess. We are a CRO, contract research organization based out of Orlando, Florida. And we also are a market access consulting company. In other words, we help companies either do early stage clinical research in Latin America with a special focus in Colombia. And we also help companies penetrate or enter the Latin American medical device market with a special focus also in Colombia. And we are located, as I said, in Orlando, Florida. We also have an office in Colombia.
And you're currently sitting where as we record this?
The Caribbean coast of Colombia. There's a big city called Barranquilla right next to Cartagena. For your audience, I'm sure they've heard about Cartagena. It's a nice tourist destination in the Caribbean coast of Colombia.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And in terms of your overall background, it's interesting to me because you didn't start in this area, right? Your focus in technology, I believe, started outside of the pharmaceutical industry, but now you're very much focused here. So can you tell us a little bit about your career and how did it start? And then more or less, how did it lead back to pharmaceuticals?
Yeah, sure. Pharmaceuticals and medical devices, actually. It's an interesting twist in my professional path. Don, I started as an engineer, electrical engineer, electronics, actually. I graduated from a university in Bogota, Colombia. I moved to the States in 1995, and I've been in the United States since then. And I got my MBA in the Boston area, and I did a lot of work in networking and telecom. I worked for Lucent Technologies. I worked for Nortel. I did a lot of international business. I used to manage a distribution network for Lucent Technologies in Latin America for a specific line of products. And in 2001 or two, when the industry collapsed, I had to search for different opportunities. And then I started venturing into different areas in telecom, networking, real estate, etc. And it was an interesting turn of events because my brother, Pedro, who is a physician, he graduated from medical school in Colombia. He trained at the Metro Health Medical Center as an internal medicine doctor. And after that, he did cardiology and interventional cardiology at the Beth Israel Medical Center at Harvard Medical School. And he became involved in the medical device or medical technology development sector. And he became a professor at the University of Miami. And the university has a lot of affiliations with researchers in Latin America, in Paraguay, Colombia, Brazil, etc. And he started doing early stage clinical research for startup companies that were working in the development of cardiovascular devices. And Pedro one day called me and said, Julio, I'm doing trials in Colombia. We're looking for somebody who can help us with the logistics of the operation of the trials, importing the devices, getting regulatory approvals, etc. And I said, sure, I can help you out. I don't know much about the business, but I know about operations and administrative things and etc. and logistics for telecom and networking. And then those skills are transferable. And he said, there's a lot of business that we have through the university, and I'm getting a lot of inquiries from companies that want to do trials outside of the university ecosystem, the University of Miami, I meant. And he said that he wanted to create a company that could help early stage startup companies from Boston, from Minneapolis, from San Francisco, or San Diego, Los Angeles, where usually the places where medical device innovations start, to do early stage clinical research in Colombia. And we created the company, we started growing, and since then, that happened in 2010. And since then, I've become the leader of the company, and we've helped probably, I don't know, many companies do trials in Colombia. And we have also expanded to market access services, which means that we help these companies also commercialize their innovations in Latin America.
Very good. And then you also have a podcast, correct? What is the focus of the podcast?
Yes, Don. The genesis of the podcast is I realized, since I came from another industry, telecom and networking, that there wasn't much quality information about Latin America and the medical device business and clinical research, et cetera. So I started putting together an FAQ in my website. It was kind of trying to answer the most frequent questions I was getting from potential clients and clients about how to do business, how to do research, or how to commercialize technologies in Latin America. Since I didn't have any reference point or anything, any background or history, I had to do a lot of research online. I had to talk to a lot of people. So I started putting together in a blog with an FAQ in our website. And that transformed into a series of articles. I started noticing that there were trends. People wanted to know more about specific topics. And then I started writing short articles about the topics. And one day, somebody from MedDevice Online, a leading medical device publication in the US, on LinkedIn said, Julio, you write interesting topics about Latin America. We have a guest writer program where you can post your articles, you can write for us, and we edit the articles, etc. And we can help you get noticed. And I said, sure, why not? So I started writing more quality articles for them, going through the whole editorial process. And so far I've written, I don't know, probably like 10 articles for them. But that exercise of writing articles at a higher quality standards that I was accustomed to, because one thing is to write articles for your own blog, and another thing is to write articles for a leading publication.
Absolutely.
Led me to learn a lot about how to put together quality information. And in the process of writing articles, Don, I had to interview people because I couldn't find reliable quality information about certain topics. So I started interviewing people on the phone. And I also realized that there's so much knowledge in people's heads, but that knowledge is not reflected anywhere, at least for Latin America. And I said, gee, I should have a podcast or something, some type of platform where I can interview people all the time, because this is fascinating. I learned so much. The industry learns so much about people's experiences in Latin America, the good, the bad, the ugly. And patients in Latin America have delayed access to medical innovations because many companies fail when they try to do business in Latin America, either when they try to do a clinical trial or they want to sell their products. So my podcast is basically a platform for me to interview people and to capture people's experiences and put them in a centralized location on the internet.
Yeah. So as a part of publishing this episode, I'll make sure that I link people to your episodes, because I've kind of gone back through your archives a little bit and listened quite a few to the episodes. I find them extremely interesting because they're directly in our space, right? They deal with a lot of really key issues as well. And so for me, it's just a great place to get some good education in terms of med device consulting, and as well as pharmaceuticals, et cetera. So things in life sciences as well. So it's just a great thing that you've done. So thank you.
Oh, thank you for your interest in my work. I appreciate it.
Yeah, sure. So in Latin America, right? So it has quite a bit going on in life sciences. I was reading the other day that the total global market for life sciences is projected to be something like $76.9 billion by 2023. And in Latin America represents roughly 10% of that number. So they grow at like a compound annual growth rate of 10%. So can you share with us some of the trends that you're seeing in Latin America that people just might not be aware of?
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point you're bringing up. But there's so much ignorance, if I should say, about the region. People want to be in their comfort zone and you want to go for the known territories, but Latin America really represents a great opportunity for life science companies to expand their footprint. But to answer your question specifically, Don, there are two big trends that I see. One is about people, and the second one is about economies. One is going back to the first one, people. We have an expanding middle class in this part of the world. And this expanding middle class is, of course, tied to economic growth in the region. So the two trends are intertwined, but people adopting more Americanized lifestyles. So you have aging population, increasing prevalence of cardiometabolic syndrome. There's an epidemic of cardiovascular disease and type 2 diabetes in Latin America. The rapid urbanization of the region have resulted in a greater prevalence of overweight of people and people with metabolic syndrome in general. I know it's bad, but it creates an opportunity for life science companies to expand their footprint because people or patients need more access to innovative technologies. The second trend is about the economies and the democracies of all these countries. And we have more stable countries in Latin America. Before, people would think about Latin America like a region full of banana republics. That's no longer the case. You may find one or two there in Central America, but now we have very solid, very stable countries like Colombia, like Chile, like Peru, etc., that are really business friendly. Many of these countries are OECD aligned, and there's something called the Pacific Alliance now, which represents I think is the 8th largest economy in the world, which is a trade bloc of the most business-friendly and forward-looking countries in Latin America, which are Colombia, Mexico, Peru, and Chile. As I said, these are OECD-aligned countries with very friendly policies to bring foreign investment. So these are, in essence, the two trends that I see happening in Latin America.
The CRO side of your business overall, how has it impacted your business having COVID and things like that in the region?
I think COVID helped everybody in one way or another to rethink how things are done. Of course, it was a bad thing, but many good things came out of it or are coming out of it. And in our case, we had challenges recruiting patients. We had challenges doing procedures because usually all of our procedures, I'm talking surgical procedures, where our clients, our sponsors are in the US and they need to travel to Colombia to do the training or to work alongside the local investigators in the actual surgical procedures to implant the medical devices that are testing in humans. And that stopped everything. Patient recruitment, they couldn't come to the site, they couldn't get screened or anything. And our proctors in the US or the team of our clients that are part of our clients, the biomedical engineers, the proctor, the C-level executive of the company usually come. For every procedure, we usually have a team of 5-6 people come and they get into the OR and they test and they work alongside the local investigators to test the safety and efficacy of the medical device they're implanting. So that didn't happen during COVID, during the earlier months of 2020. We had to become creative. We had to implement telehealth technologies to somehow have the evaluation visits on patients and move the trial forward. And we had to set up cameras in the OR in such a way where the team in the US could proctor the cases and train the local investigators in the technique of how to implant the specific device. So it was a learning experience for us and for our clients as well. And that you don't always need to travel. You don't always need to see the patient's face to screen them. So it was good for us. We learned a lot from this experience.
Yeah, but I guess there's two parts of that. So one part being hopefully these advances in terms of the ways that people are going through that or things that they can leverage again in the future. So maybe to your point, maybe it helps us do things faster because you're not having to climb on an airplane and travel and go through customs and everything else. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
I guess the other part though that I would selfishly say as well though is that then unfortunately you miss out on experiencing the culture in the region
Of course.
Visiting some areas in Latin America would be a shame as well to miss out on. So, yeah.
Agree. And the other thing that I will add, Don, is the fact that, for example, in regards to companies that are already commercial, that already have an FDA or CE mark approved product, they can't travel. They cannot meet distributors or potential distributors at trade shows. They cannot visit the distributor's office in Latin America. They cannot meet the distributor face to face. So that also represents some challenges in how to move forward their interest in the region. So we've also seen an increase in the interest of these companies in our work. We have, as I said at the beginning, we also help companies commercialize their innovations in Latin America. So we help them find and conduct due diligence on distributors. We help them do local market research. We help them with their regulatory market clearances in all these countries. Since they cannot travel, they now have to rely on a third party like us to do that work that they were doing before themselves.
Yeah, I think everybody misses trade shows for sure.
Yeah.
And being able to make those connections and really build that next round of business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, virtual is not the same. It's good. It's a good option. It's a good alternative. It's better than nothing, but it's never the same as the human contact.
Yeah, for sure. So we're at the point in the show where I ask the same 3 questions of every guest. Julio, what inspires you?
That's a great question. That's what wakes me up every morning, actually, Don. And I'm so inspired about the fact that I'm in a unique position to elevate a community here in Colombia and the greater Latin American region. We have such an incredible impact on patients, on the professionals that work with us, in the country itself. Every clinical trial that we bring to Colombia really makes me proud of what we've built as a country here in Colombia. As I said in the show, I'm originally from Colombia, but I just so happen to be a U.S. citizen as well. I've been in the U.S. for over 25 years, but I can see both cultures and I can see how much potential these countries have. And every trial, every company that we attract to Colombia means that patients have earlier access to medical innovations that they wouldn't have. So I'm so thrilled about being able to help patients in that regard. And also so thrilled about being able to be like a bridge and have Colombia, my home country, be part of the global medical device development ecosystem, and bring these innovative companies from Boston, from Minneapolis, from San Diego, from San Francisco, from LA to Colombia is such a fantastic feeling because they create these connections with local physicians. The local physicians gain so much from being able to collaborate with people with great academic backgrounds from the US that are part of these startup companies. And also, as I said, the income that the country receives, trials are not cheap. This means that the country receives money for the work that it does exporting knowledge, which is really what these countries need in Latin America. They should stop thinking about exporting avocados or mangoes. They should think about exporting knowledge. And that really inspires me that we are part of that group of people that are really having Colombia as a position in Colombia as a country where we can export knowledge. So that inspires me a lot.
Very good. And yeah, it's interesting that you use the bridge metaphor because as you were going through it, what kept coming to mind to me was that bridge, right? Just the idea of bringing one country and the other country closer together, or even the medical device and the patient closer together. Both bridges are important. So thank you.
Yeah, sure.
What concerns you?
Well, my concern is that patients have delayed access to medical innovations. There's a big problem in the industry, Don, that very few people talk about. Companies in the US develop their technologies, fascinating technologies. Some of the technologies that you see in the US are science fiction, but rightly so, they think about the US market, they think about the European market, they think about the Japanese market. And if there are crazy enough, they also think about the Chinese market, which is huge. But they almost never think about Latin America. Latin America is about the rest of the world. If we have somebody interested in our product, we'll respond to the email and we'll see if we can make a sale. That's it. But it's not in their business plan, right? So patients in Latin America have delayed access to medical innovations. From the time a product is approved by the FDA in the United States, it will probably be about 10 to 15 years before that same product is available in Colombia, in Peru, in Chile, on a patient bed. And that's really sad. That really concerns me. It doesn't have to be that way. And I also, going back to your first question, it inspires me a lot that I can help.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Because nobody else is doing the work that we're doing. Modesty aside, I am fortunate enough to be able to be part of the global medical device ecosystem and also be part of the Latin American world. And I can help the two worlds talk to each other. So I can help facilitate that connection. And our work is a catalyzer for companies to pay attention to Latin America and for patients to have access to breakthrough innovations.
Excellent. And what excites you?
Well, making a difference in a patient's life. Every time we implant a device on a patient and we see that patient's life being transformed, because the type of technologies that we get involved in are life-saving technologies, cardiovascular devices, orthopedic devices, ophthalmology devices, where there's nothing else in the market. Otherwise, the company wouldn't be funded, right? So one of every 100 companies get funded. So in the United States, and the reason they get funded is because they have a breakthrough medical technology. So every time we have a trial in Colombia and we recruit 10, 20, 30, 50 patients for this trial, we're changing the lives of those patients because they'll probably be dead or have a very bad quality of life. And that really wakes me up every morning. And also the fact that we can elevate the local community in terms of increasing their quality of life, patients, and also bringing all these funds, all these investment from the US to Colombia, and everybody benefits from that. The local investigator, the local clinic, the office administrative assistant, everybody gets US dollars that are badly needed in this part of the world, and exporting a service, a knowledge-based service that has high value in the global medical device world. So that excites me a lot.
Thank you. One of the things I just wanted to mention as we bring this podcast to a close is that I will provide links to Julio's articles and to his podcast on the website. It's obviously something that we do for all of the guests, but I just would really encourage people to go out and really investigate some of the things that he's written, as well as the podcast itself. And with that, Julio Martinez-Clark, I wanted to thank you for being on the podcast. Thanks so much for being a guest. And thanks so much for sharing with us a little bit more experience in terms of what's going on in Latin America.
Absolutely, Don. Thank you so much for your interest in my work and the work that we do as a team here at BioAccess. And thank you for having me as a guest in your podcast. And I look forward to having you as a guest in my podcast as well.
That'll be great. There'll be something else for my listeners to go listen to. So thank you.
Sure. My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to Life Science Success. For complete details about this podcast, including show notes, how to get in touch with guests, and more episodes, please visit www.lifesciencesuccess.com. If there's someone you'd like for us to invite to the show as a guest, please let me know by sending me a message at the podcast website. Please click subscribe on your favorite podcast app, share the podcast, or tell a friend about it. And last but not least, rate the podcast. Thank you again.